Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Okay, iCON T10. So this is a tabletop control panel, 10-inch, and it also has integrated control. So it's possible that this is the only piece of gear you'll need. Again, if you need to expand, you can use the C8 as the master and use the 10 as the slave to access the user interface in the C8. Or I could just use the E4 as additional I/O. And again, this is powered 802.3 AF. We have also added a wall mount version of the T10. Pretty much exactly the same product, but it's a wall mount, and we provide you with the gang box to mount this with. That's included. So it's just another version of the T10 we just saw. Okay, so the product I keep referencing, the C8. So this is a controller with quite a bit of I/O, as you can see. So when you use the C8, you actually create your user interface pages and you load them along with the control automation code into the C8. And then you would use any of the listed interfaces to access those pages. So the T4W, if you use it with the C8 now, it's just a touch panel for this controller. And the same goes with the rest of the products. And you see I mentioned Chrome tablets and Windows and Mac and so on. So this C8 offers me the ability to look at user interfaces on these different platforms. Now you can also add the E4 if this is not enough I/O. So let's take a look at the E4. That is not a controller, it's just a port expander. So it must be used with another piece of equipment. So I either add this on to a C8 or I can add it on to T4W, K10D, the T10, and T10W. It allows you also, because it goes on the network, you can have this port expander somewhere else in your system. So maybe you have a controller at an administrative or tech desk, and you want to access things on the floor above you or different rooms around the building, you can put these E4s in the appropriate location. So you can actually use more than one E4 if you need to. You can have multiples of them in one system. Okay, so that's the hardware. Now we're going to look at the software. This is the programming environment. And I know there's a lot to look at here, but I'll explain all of it. The first part that I want to make sure we cover is the programming language easy. And it's really important to stress that this is human readable coding. And if you look at the examples I have here, for example, in the orange box over here, I'm calling a device driver to send a string. And the code literally reads, call the feature sending a text string to the PS610 switcher, that's one of our products, over LAN, and then the string that I'm sending is listed at the end. The next line of code that I'm showing here is a print to console code. That's a common thing that program engineers do, is load their debug console up with diagnostics to make sure things are happening exactly the way as they expected the programming to achieve. The other example down at the bottom here, I've got a driver event that happens only under a certain condition. So to go through that example, if the string contains the following text together, it can be anywhere in the string. So the string could say a lot of other things in it, but as long as the program can find the part of the string that says HDMI space 1, then it starts to execute the code within the if end statement that you see here. If the string doesn't meet those conditions, then it will just skip over this function. It'll ignore it until it does find HDMI space 1 in a return string, and then it will execute the code. So let's say it does find that. You see the second line down, style control, that says change the attribute status of button input HDMI 1. And the numbers in parentheses, 32, is a unique ID number. We're not going to get into that in this webinar. That's in our technical webinars that I encourage you to come to if you are actually going to be programming. So it says change the attribute status of button input HDMI 1 to active. So it's doing that because the return string indicated that HDMI input 1 is selected. So then it changes the button on the touch screen to an active state. And whatever that active state is what you've created in your graphics design. So it may turn the button green, or it may show a picture, or you may change the text on the button. So there's a lot of different style choices you can make to indicate to the end user that HDMI 1 is selected. Now, if there was an HDMI 2 button on the user interface, but HDMI 1 is selected, I would want to change the attribute of that button back to its normal state, which would be just unpressed, so that the user is not confused why possibly two buttons show active at the same time. So this is just an example. There's many, many others, and I'll actually just show you in iCON. We will go ahead and make something real quick. So let's look at, we'll place a button just to make the example, but I'm going to pick a button and I'll put it on the user interface. Here's my button, and I'm not going for any styling here. So we're just doing the example, but let's say this is HDMI 3. Okay, so we want to have a button that fires HDMI 3, and I'm going to make that text a little bigger so it's more readable. And right now I'm setting it what it looks like in the normal state, which is inactive, right? And so now if I go to the active state, I can also have a different view of the text. I can have it different when the button is active. And I also may want to show maybe some kind of indicator that that button has been pressed. So in the active state might be green, and in the normal state it's blue. Okay, so you can see that. All right, so now if I want to write code for that, in this case, I'd want something to happen when I press the button. So, and by the way, I haven't typed anything other than the word HDMI 3. So all this is mouse clicks. So here I'm going to do a new button event. Now I'll go ahead and type, and I'll say HDMI 3, and we'll just call it that. Okay, so now when that comes up in my list of buttons down here in my UI events, I just want to add an action. So I'll say I want that to send a string to a switch to tell it to change to HDMI 3. So that's calling a driver. So I'm now just using my mouse. I click call driver with my mouse, and then it guides me and only lets me pick valid entries. So now I look for the device I want to control. So I've got all sorts of things here, but I want to control our PS610 switch over a LAN connection. So I select that, and then I say I want to send a text string, and then it's going to be called a constant because I'm defining what the control string looks like. And here I could just write, set HDMI 3, and commonly you have a carriage return, should be /R. I say okay, and that's it. So that's how easy it is to write a string. All right, so again, you saw me kind of example what I'm showing you down here. We also have, as I mentioned, the if statements, right? So now, while language is quite easy, you do have the option of writing in Java. That's one of the top 5 languages in the world. So if you're a programmer, I'm pretty sure you know it. And if you're not, I'm pretty sure you know somebody who knows it. So it's an extremely popular language. All right, and one of the nice things that we do here is, let's say I write, this is just easier to write in easy, but maybe I might find it easier to write some other kinds of code in Java. You see, I've got Java here, right? But I've got easy on almost the exact same function, right? So this is essentially, both of these are almost identical. And you can also, let's say you write your string. I'm going to write another string, just to give you some examples, but let's say I want to change the style control of one of the individual buttons on here, and you see how it's guiding me. So I say, well, let's see, that's HDMI, here's HDMI 3, right? So I'll pick that, and I'll say I want the status of it to be active. Okay, that was all mouse clicks. All right, so you didn't have to write any code here. You just walk yourself through. And then maybe I want something to come up in my console debug window so I can do testing, and I'll say print a constant. So here in this case, I'll say HDMI input is set to number 3. Okay, so I did type that. The rest of it is button clicks. All right, so now whenever somebody presses HDMI 3, the console down here will show that state. All right, we'll also do it. I'll do a conditional for you. So let's say I want to do a condition statement. So if a return string contains the constant HDMI3, right, then maybe I want to start a timer, and I'll do timer start get fan temp. Okay, that was all clicks of a mouse. Okay, now let's say I want to see this in Java code. I can flip it, and now I can see it in Java code. So this actually helps you learn it. So now I could do my own stuff here. I could say call driver, and you see how it now walks me through, gives me a few different choices. I'm going to go with call driver, and then it explains what that code is going to do. And then there's an example that I can look at. So I'll click that, and I can now see it says call driver 1 and fire a certain function there. But for us, we're going to do call driver, let's say 001, send tx string set HDMI3. There. Okay, so you get the idea. I can also do comments and say the above sets the PS610 to HDMI3. All right. Okay, so that covers what I'm mentioning here, autofill. You saw how it, as I went to the next step, it restricted me to legal choices. Like once I said call a driver, it forced me to only use valid driver IDs. And if I wanted to change the style control of a button, it walked me through and it gave me code hints as I went along, as you saw. And I can also do copy and paste and cloning. So for example, let's go here. If I say I want to copy this first line of code, I can come down here and I can paste that code again, or I could, there it is down there. So then I can delete that if I didn't like how that turned out, or I can just make small changes to that copied line of code. And that's probably the most common thing you're going to do when you copy something. Might be because I not only want to set slider to 100, but maybe I want to set a button to, a status. So the copy and paste is very useful. And then I can also clone things. So let's pick the HDMI3 button, and I'm going to clone that event, and I'll call it HDMI4. And there it is. Now I can come in here and say, it doesn't like what I did here because I made up some stuff. So I'll get rid of that. But you see it updates when I correct things. Or I put in here HDMI4, then I can just say, change the string going out to the switcher to HDMI4. And maybe I change button 35 because it matches HDMI4. So this lets me, whoops, that says 5. Right, so this allows me to easily just go change a couple things, and I just cloned the whole event and just had to do a little bit of changing to make it now a usable UI event. Okay, easy graphics creation. I showed you a little bit of that. As an example here, you see these buttons on the upper left. These are my inputs. Those actually used to look like the buttons on the far right, but then I went in and I applied a picture to them. So, I could do that here I could say the background is not a color, it's an image. And then I can go look for an image. So maybe here, we'll just pick something. And you see now it's an image. But I also would need to then pick an image for its on state. So you see it's different. So I may have a different image. And I can also do things like change the way that information appears. That's what I did on this button over here. Is when this button is normal, it's there a smaller size to it, and then when it's active, you see that button gets bigger. So there's the normal and there's the active, kind of prompting the user that that one was selected. There's a lot of things you could do that way. Okay, the components that are available to you are buttons and containers and image windows, video windows, sliders, and so on. So down here, I can choose that I only look at buttons that are available, and you can completely change the way all these buttons look. I've got progress bars. As you can see here, I've got one of these controls. I've got over here, I've changed the color of it. I've changed the shape of the slider. I have the value of the slider show up on the button of the slider, and it changes dynamically as you adjust it. Okay, and I showed you the if then else statements already, and I did incorporate the timer in there, but for example, here is a simple timer, and all that's doing is going and grabbing the temperature of the switcher and displaying that temperature on the user interface. And I can choose to only display it if it hits a certain value. For example, maybe I don't want just showing a switcher temperature on the screen all the time unless it's overheating. And then I can have a threshold that I can add into that. But timers become very useful when you're doing automated events. Maybe you're trying to do something at certain times of the day, but if then statements are also great tools for automation. Okay, also very easy project management. Now, this slide may look daunting, but when you understand the components, it's really not much. And we'll do that by looking at actual icons. So I'm going to go into the Project Manager tab. And on the far left is how I organize my device drivers for the devices I'm controlling. So in this specific example, I'm using a T10 touch panel as the controller. And I'm using an E4 to add additional ports to the T10. And I can use the folders to organize the locations of these device drivers in a way that makes sense for the application. So here you'll see in the conference room, I've got a PS610 switch and a Collabora BYOD device, both connected via LAN. I've got a camera and then an E4 expander. And then I have a reference to Space Odyssey for those who know the movie. So I have an escape pod room with the HAL 9000 camera. And when I click on these drivers, you see in the middle window here, it's showing me the settings of each of these drivers. So I can set the IP address of the HAL 9000 camera that I'm controlling and what port it's on. The Z1000 camera I'm controlling over RS-232 at 38400 baud, PS610. I've got at a different IP address and so on. So you can click through and look at, the detailed settings of each of the drivers in this window. And the window at the top is the connections to the T10 controller. So if you look at the drivers I have listed, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different devices, and the T10 is connected to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 devices, 5 of them being LAN connections and 1 of them being RS-232 or 485. As I mentioned, for the Z1000 camera is being controlled over serial. Okay, on the far right is the device database. This is handled in multiple ways, so you're never stuck. First way is when we develop a driver, we will provide it to you to import into your easy control programming environment. So you can import drivers as we make them. or you can make your own. So you can create your own drivers and populate that, and you're welcome to send those to us for additional testing. But it's an ongoing maintenance, building drivers for new products and so on. So this way you have two options. You could say, hey, PureLink, can you guys write a driver for me? And we'll tell you how long it will take us to get that to you. Or you could say, I'm on a job site. Somebody just gave me a new piece of gear to go in a system, and I need to write the driver, and you can do that quite easily. So I will show you just a quick example. So I'm going to create a new device, and we'll make this our VIP Cam 30-20X camera. Oh, actually, sorry, that goes over here. And here we'll say PureLink. And down here, I need to add transport information. So I'm going to control this over COM. So I'm going to call this VIP Cam. Let me redo that. So we'll call it a LAN driver. Okay, and then I can come in here and I can create just a simple control setup. Let's see, what did actually, I made this a COM port, but that's okay. We'll just do it that way. We'll say 57600, and we'll say RS485. Then we import just a generic library of COM driver functions, and that's it. So now it appears in the list. Here it is. And now I have the communications information for this VIP Cam 30. So what I'll do is I'll add it to the project. And then I could put it in maybe the escape pod room with the HAL 9000. So there it is. And then when I go to write code for it, let's change what this button does. So we're going to get rid of that. And I'm going to create a new button event. I'm going to say VIP Cam 30. We'll say preset 1. Okay, so I'm going to create a function to make the camera move to preset 1 whenever this button is pushed, and we'll change the name of that. We'll just call preset 1. Then I'll add in here a call driver, and I'm just using my mouse. Call the VIP Cam 30, send a text string, and we'll use Visca protocol. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but we'll just say preset 1, carriage return. Okay, and that's it. So you saw me write a communications driver for the VIP Cam 30 in minutes, and then create a function to set it to preset 1 without typing any code other than what the string is that has to go out. So what we really have gone over today is just an overview. We have technical classes. If you are interested, please contact us. You know, we can get you into these classes. But the takeaways I really hope that you get from this is that it's insanely easy to program. I spent many, many years as a Crestron and AMX programmer. I've done some QSYS programming, so I know what it's like to work with those platforms. And I have no doubt that this is far, far easier and therefore far faster and therefore less expensive. And with all that comes the nice little side effect of reliability. So it becomes very easy to implement, operate, and not have to go back and touch over and over again. Okay, so we invite you to test drive any of the iCON products for 30 days. We believe in putting our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and you get this on your bench and you try it out and make sure it's right for you. But I think that's where you really can experience the paradigm shift that we're creating in the industry with simple, easy programming of control systems. And of course, we will support you through your designs to make sure that they're effective. Okay, so just a couple of quick slides before we wrap up. You can follow us on a number of platforms, as you see: Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube. I highly recommend LinkedIn at minimum. And even more importantly, on our website, you can register your email for newsletters. About twice a week, we send out news through our email database, and we do parrot that over LinkedIn and so on. So you can get it that way, but you might be more commonly looking at your email than LinkedIn or Facebook. So please sign up on our website, upper right corner. See if I can quickly example that for you. So if we go to PureLinkAV.com, and you'll see in the upper right, I can register. And then once you register, you'll get our news every week. Anyone have a question? Please write it. So Kevin, you asked a question, device drivers. I will tell you that we're constantly making device drivers, as I mentioned, and we send those out to those who have the iCON easy control programming interface to add in. And if you have a product that you need a device driver written for, you can do a number of things. You can send in products for us to test and vet device drivers, or you can email us and send us the commands, and we'll write the driver and then send it to you for testing. Or you can write the driver and test it and send it to us or not. But we try to offer you every possible way. I hope that answers your question, but there's no stone unturned on how to make drivers. We'll do it, you do it, we do it together. The most important thing I would say is testing drivers. I think everyone would agree with that. So if you have product that you want to send to us to write the driver, please do that. Ask, is the iCON program free to download, and how do I get it? It is free. It's meant to accompany equipment purchases, and I think you've done that. So I can send that to you, and that's how you get it. You contact us for the programming environment, and we will send it to you. And then it's just a quick registration. Well, not registration. I give you a password, and you're good to go. All right, so we try to make this as painless as possible. Send it to you, send you your password, and you'll be up and running. And we'll happily help you with your first attempts. Okay, any other questions? Well, feel free to ask. And if you can't think of it right now, then here's my email on the far right, keith@purelink.av.com. And of course, if you just want to do the 30-day test drive, sales@purelink.av.com. Okay, so thanks again, everybody. I'll see you on the next webinar. For more on iCON, just email me personally, and I will make sure that you get materials and guides on iCON programming. Okay, thanks, everybody. Have a good day. I'll see you next time.